Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. My name is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic, and I'm joined today by three of my closest childhood buddies, Mike, Kingfish Schembri, Bill, Bo Kucharski Wilson, and Steve, the Razor Rosati. The four of us graduated from high school in June of 1966, and now that we are in our mid-70s, I thought it would be fun for us to get together and share our memories of that wonderful summer, the summer of '66. Bo, Razor, Kingfish, thanks for joining me today on Mark at the Mic podcast, sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. It's okay to say thanks, guys. Welcome. Okay, it's okay to chime in.
All right. Good to see you, Mark. Good to see Mike. Good to see Steve.
Yeah.
Very good start, guys. This is really good.
Nice
Okay,
to
we're
see you
off
all.
and running.
Right.
I want to thank Bo and Maria for sharing their home today. We're up in beautiful Reading. It's snowing like crazy out here in late February, but it's fun to be with everybody. And I'm going to just start with Bo because he's the oldest here. Share with me one memory of the summer of '66.
I had a 51 Chevy that when I bought it had skirts and a visor, and I thought it was so uncool I took them all off. And how dumb was I?
Why was that?
Because, not that I have the car anymore, but it was just so nostalgic. Looking back on it now that I'm 75 years old, I can see how valuable that car could have been.
Yeah. What do you mean by skirts? What's a skirt on the car? You said you removed the skirt.
They're pieces of the car that are at the back wheels, the fender wells, they attach so that when you look at the wheel, you only see, or the tire, you only see half of it.
Got it.
Because the other part's covered up. And then if you have a flat tire, you got to change the tire, you got to take the skirts off, and there are clips underneath that enable you to do that.
Great.
Do you remember that car, Bill? You used to pick us up and take us to school and that? Remember?
Yeah.
Remember it didn't have any brakes, so we'd have to go into the parking lot
No,
where the
that was the 50 Ford that I had.
and then we had to go to the dumpsters, and you would ram in the dumpsters to stop it?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
That was Mike Kingfish Schembri asking that question. We'll get to you in a minute, Mike. Okay, I'm going around the table here, all right? Razor, share with me a memory of the summer of '66.
Well, the first one that comes to mind is my first job out of high school, which was with the Burlingame Rec Department. And my job was to go around town with my supervisor, Bobby Wilkinson,
Bobby Wilkinson.
and line all the baseball fields for Little League play that summer.
All the
So-
baseball fields in Burlingame?
Yeah.
Well, there were quite a few.
Well, there were at least 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Ray Park.
for the first week, he would take me around town, show me the route, and then stand there and watch me do it. Starting the second week, we'd leave the yard, I'd drive, and we'd make a pit stop somewhere close to the firehouse. And he would get out, and I'd go on and work.
What would Bob do?
Well, Bob was visiting a friend.
Oh, okay. That
It wasn't
kind of pit
his
stop.
wife.
Got it, right. Okay. I think we'll just move from there, Steve. That's a great memory to share with us.
Okay, well, I had more.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to happy to come back to you. So last in line is Mike Kingfish Schembri, which is fitting because Mike was sort of our unofficial leader back at that time. Mike, share a memory of the summer of '66.
Well, I remember the 4 of us. We would always get together on the weekends when we weren't working, and we'd go to Santa Cruz or Aptos, sleep on the beach, bring our beer, have a great time, just doing nothing and not worrying about our surroundings or anything that happened that day besides having a good time. Most of us would meet a girl or try to meet a girl. Some of us would, some of us wouldn't, but it wasn't successful for all of us at that time, but
Yeah.
we had a good time.
I think it was more fun when we were unsuccessful, to be honest with you.
Well, I think we were unsuccessful more than we were
Mark, I'm not
successful.
so sure if I can agree with that.
And there was always
Oh,
a trip
excuse
to
me for
McDonald's
interrupting.
on the way
Mike,
home.
Yeah.
Mike, what kind of summer job did you have?
I worked at the rec department for Bobby Wagner.
Ray Wagner.
Ray Wagner. I worked at that. I started working my sophomore year, and I went through my 2 years at college. At CSM, I worked at the rec department. Great job, great people. Ray Wagner. Then there was Charlie, and Rick Foley was we used to work there all the
Charlie
time. too.
Gear, Rick
Charlie,
Foley. Yeah, those are great names. Ray Wagner.
Ray Wagner. Bobby Wilkinson worked for. We met Bobby Wilkinson because he would play baseball with us. Bobby,
Yeah, and basketball at the little park,
and he
Victoria
would-
Park.
He would call himself Bobby AC for Bobby's Athletic Club. Yeah. Yeah.
Bo, was that the summer? That was the summer you took the motorcycle and drove to Canada?
Actually, it wasn't, Mark.
Oh, it wasn't? Well, tell us about it anyway.
I was 18 or 19 when that happened. I was working at. It started out as Super S, extension of Safeway over there in that shopping center off.
Yeah,
Delaware.
they call it Pendel now, Peninsula, Delaware.
And
Right.
anyway, I was working there. I saved my money. I had a motorcycle and decided I'm going to take a motorcycle trip to Canada. I have relatives in Canada. So off I went up through Oregon. I stopped in the university. I stopped in Tacoma. I think it was Tacoma, University of Puget Sound, and hung out with a friend of ours, Kent Pierce, who we graduated with, and he was going to school there. Then on up into British Columbia and saw my sister's grandmother, and then across Highway 1 into Banff, where I had to get my motorcycle fixed, and then down to my aunt and uncles, which they lived on a farm to the west of Calgary, and spent the summer there.
As I recall, that was all on a 250cc Honda motorcycle.
250 Scrambler.
Scrambler, yeah.
Yeah, I think I weighed more than the motorcycle.
What a ride that was.
That was quite a ride.
Yeah. Razor, Steve Rosati, care to share some memories of our trips to San Francisco, most specifically 16th and Mission, the burlesque shows back in those days?
Well, the first memory I get out of that is going up there in Jack's red Ford.
Yeah.
And
Jack Shan, we're talking about.
he had a portable phone in his car. And as we walked by or drove by some of the ladies, we would drive a little slower, sometimes put the brakes on and pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And then watch them scatter. It was such
Right.
a great time.
Do you remember going to the 16th and Mission burlesque shows?
I've been there before.
You've been there before.
Yes.
Yeah. Mike,
Reluctantly, but
I think you used to kind of get dressed up and buy up a little bit for us before we went into those burleys.
Well, I don't know if dressed up. I mean, I don't know if I owned that much clothing back then, but we
You
used
would wear
to
a
go,
coat.
Well, yeah, we wore a coat and maybe a tie, but that was a lot of fun. And that's when you could go to San Francisco and enjoy yourself, and you weren't concerned about your surroundings or anything else. You knew you were safe and you'd have a good time. I think the place was called Finocchio's.
No, it was called 16th and Mission, the burlesque shows.
I thought it was called Finocchio.
We went there
Finocchio,
too.
there was-
Yeah,
we
it
went there
was.
as well.
But
That
yeah,
was
that's
on
a-
Broadway.
that's
I'm not sure if there
that's
is.
where
yeah.
the female impersonators.
Yes, the female impersonators. That's
worked at
correct.
Pinocchio's.
They were impersonators? They
Yeah,
weren't real females?
Pinocchios.
Oh.
Yeah.
Didn't you go out with one of them, Mark?
Yeah, he was terrific. What about our Tahoe visits? We went to Tahoe a few times, right? During the summertime, or Clear Lake and Berryessa.
I don't know if it was 66, but I can remember going to
Bo,
Clear
this is
Lake.
strictly 66.
Clear Lake, and I don't know. I know Steve was there, you were there, and I don't know if it was Mike or Gandolfi, but there were 4 or 5 of us. Somehow we had a trunk full of beer.
Yeah, I don't know how that
And,
happened.
So I decided I'd do the cooking. So I'm cooking breakfast one morning, and my good friend Steve comes out of the tent, looks into the pan, and says, "Can you give me a couple of pieces of bacon with doesn't have so much fat on it?" I just about hit him with the goddamn frying pan.
He chased me around the lake.
Yeah, I remember we made that pyramid of beer cans. So
Yeah.
it was a 3-day stretch, I think, a Friday, Saturday, and we left Sunday
that
afternoon.
long?
Yeah, yeah. It was
That was a
amazing.
pretty sizable pyramid we made.
It was a great sized pyramid, yeah. And then we would sometimes go underage, of course, to the casinos. And once again, the great Kingfish Schembri, Mike Schembri, would do his share of gambling in there, playing blackjack like his dad taught him.
I think the biggest thing we had there was, remember when we went with Santos? And Santos played an 8 spot. And he hit it. He got 8 out of 8 or 7 out of 8.
Yeah, he hit a Keno ticket, and I don't
Keno.
remember what the numbers,
Yeah.
but he won $1,250.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to take a chance on not being able to collect it, and I happened to be 21 at the time. Of course, this wasn't 66. But I went in and collected the money and got nailed for the taxes. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
So in my notes here, I have some things that say sports and activities. We played a little bit of touch football at Ray Park during the summertime, right? We had kind of graduated from Victoria and moved to Ray Park because it was a little larger. Plus, they had a clubhouse over there. That Mike, I think you were in charge of that clubhouse.
I had the key to the clubhouse, so we could get in and get the footballs and stuff. But we used to all meet there. I mean, and we met the kids from Ray Park area too.
Right. Here we were, the East Side boys coming to the West Side.
Yeah. I remember sometimes we didn't have a car, so we'd have to either walk or jog all the way there from our homes in Burlingame, which was a long, maybe 2-mile jog.
Yeah.
But we would end up there, we would play football.
Right.
Play all day and then go home.
What else do you remember about that little clubhouse? Anything else come to mind?
Well, I remember we used to meet there with alcohol and drink. What Ray Wagner didn't know about, but we...
That was a common thread.
That was just beer, though, right? No big deal.
Back then, yeah. But that was the year, 66 was the year Burlingame, our high school, had the great football team.
Okay, so now let's move to, when you guys were at Burlingame High, that senior year, getting ready, we're going into our summertime and all that. What do you guys remember about Burlingame Avenue? Bo?
I remember the Fox Theater.
Uh-huh.
All right, and I can tell you a story about the Fox Theater, but it's not 66, it's prior.
I'll let you tell the story.
Okay, when I was, 12 or 13, I lived with siblings, and there were 4 or 5 of us, and we would go to the movies at night. Well, one night we went to the movies at the Fox Theater, and after the movie we were walking home, and like I heard a little ducks with me in the lead, and we go by this car, and this girl is saying, "Can you help me? Can you help me?" So I look over, and her friend, it was a 2-door coupe. She had leaned over the back seat, and the seats folded forward because it was a 2-door, and she got herself stuck between the seat and the dashboard.
Oh, okay.
And they had a little bit of alcohol. And every time she tried to get out, she just tried to back out, and it would pull the seat up, and she couldn't get out. I don't know how long she was stuck there, but I was able to convince her, let me push the seat down so you can slide out sideways. And they got out and went on their merry way to wherever they were going. And the little ducks walked on home.
The little ducks walked up. So you were kind of a hero that night.
I was a major hero.
Steve Rosati, Razor, memories of Burlingame Avenue?
Well, I don't have as many as you guys probably do, since I was only there the 1 year. So nothing really.
Well, what about your dad? He worked for Mauser Electric.
Well, that's true.
And that was
too.
off of Burlingame Avenue, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
So
do you remember any of the delis that were on the avenue?
No.
I know if I ask you
no,
liquor
I
stores
don't.
or the bars, you know exactly where they are. But
that's where we always were.
Yeah, that's where you guys were. I was a Catholic boy.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Well, I wasn't
True blue.
apparently a very good Catholic.
Yeah. You guys
No,
remember Cat Patch 2? The first topless bar in Burlingame?
Well, that's where the round table is or was.
Was, right.
Yeah.
Mike, you remember that one?
No.
Okay.
No.
You can. You
No.
don't remember that at all?
No.
Okay. But you do remember Danello's Deli.
I remember Danello's. I remember the El Camino. That was fun.
Why?
Well, we used to meet and go to the El Camino Real, and we'd go hitchhiking. But our whole intention wasn't to hitchhike. Our whole intention was to meet females. So we would put out our thumbs, and cars would slow down. And if it was a guy in the car, we'd say, "See ya. We're not interested.
We don't need a ride."
We don't need a ride. And then when girls would come in, we'd jump in and start BSing with them and see,
What's up, right?
Yeah, what's up? Who
Where's
are
the
you?
party?
Where do you go to school?
Yeah. Mhm. Where do you go to school?
Yeah, exactly. Where's
We
the
got
party?
a clubhouse we can go to.
Yeah, we go to the clubhouse at the Ray Park.
Yeah. Were we aware at that time in that summer of '66 that there was a draft going on and there was a Vietnam War? I don't even think were we oblivious to that?
I wasn't.
Because you were what? 1A? Classified 1A?
Well, I wasn't classified 1A at the time, but I had started CSM, and one thing led to another, and I wound up dropping out of CSM, and I got my draft notice, and I don't know if it was a 66 or 67. But so I was very aware of Vietnam.
I remember it was the summer of '66 because we had a going away party for you, and you never went away. You never went in the service.
So did you have a coming back party?
Well, today. Yeah. What did you get 4F'd for? You must have been 4F'd.
I had high blood pressure, and I was too heavy. And the doctor at the draft says, "Okay, you need to lose some weight and get your blood pressure down." I said, "You bet, doc. I'm on my way." Where's that piece of pie?
Steve, were you aware of the draft and the Vietnam War and all that? I mean, I think
Not
we knew
during
it
the
was
summer.
going on.
When I started at CSM in the fall, it became apparent, and people were sweating it out what number they would get in the draft.
Do you remember your number?
Yeah, I was 333 or 335.
Oh my gosh, towards the
So
end.
they never would have got me, but I did have one PE class with a kid that got number 1.
Man.
He came to school the next day an entirely different person.
Yeah.
He was scared to death.
Mike, what about you? Do you remember the Vietnam War, the draft, all that?
I was in the hundreds. My draft was in the hundreds. I remember that we had to keep 15 units or above, or we were eligible for the draft. And that's probably, for some of us, it was for me, one of the reasons I went to college is because if I didn't, I was going in the Army, and I had no interest of going in the Army at that time.
Who were some of the other guys that we hung out with during that time, during that summer?
Well, there was Gandolfi.
What's his first name? I'm sorry.
James?
Jim Gandolfi?
Jimmy Gandolfi, Jim
Okay.
Gandolfi. He had his brother.
Kent Pierce.
Kent Pierce,
Candy.
right.
His name was Candy.
Kent was one of the Hillsboro boys.
Yeah.
Terry Roundy.
Terry Roundy.
Terry Roundy, right. Dan Santos. Did
Dan
we say Dan
Santos.
Santos?
We just did.
Lived on Victoria.
The Shaw twins.
Doug and Ken.
Yeah, Doug and Ken.
The Shaw boys, right? They had Shaw's ice cream and candies
Yeah, and Millbrae.
on Millbrae, right?
Every once in a while, we'd hang around with Zarelli and Borelli.
Gary Sorelli, Bill Borelli,
yeah.
right? Mm-hmm.
Sarah boys.
Yeah,
Yep.
Sarah
A couple
boys.
of we would trickle in here
Yeah.
now and then. There was also Don Lindstrom.
Yeah.
Remember we went up to his cabin in Pinecrest?
Pinecrest. His good friend Dan Good. Remember him?
Yep.
And then down the street, every once in a while, when we'd be playing basketball or football, Lebrano would show up. Lenny Lebrano would show up and play with us.
Yeah. So just touching on your senior year, right before graduation, do you have any kind of memorable teachers that you sort of, or football coach, or coaches in general that you sort of admired or remember? Bo?
Bob Milano,
Yeah, Bobby.
the baseball coach in Mike's senior year. And I was going to try out for the baseball team. And I never got the chance because Bob Milano heard some story that I was a bad influence on Mike. And Mike he was going to be his star pitcher. So he was not going to have any part of that. So I wound up being manager of the baseball team.
What does the manager do? Are you calling the plays or something?
No,
Doing the
I'm-
signals?
I'm-
What's the manager?
Taking care of equipment and that kind of thing.
Okay, I got it.
Play catch with the guys if there's nobody else to play
Warming
catch with,
somebody
that,
up,
That
uh-huh.
kind of stuff.
Steve, can you share a couple of those memories of favorite teachers or coaches?
Well, I was on the baseball team, so Milano was my coach as well. And I had just come off the cross-country team because I had just moved to town, and that's all I could get in order to play baseball in the spring. So he had us run 2 laps around the track every day, and I was fast.
Mm-hmm.
And all the guys that had been there for 3 years, they weren't about to do that crap. So we'd come around the first, and at the end of the field, there's a
Ceremonial bench, that big bench.
Yeah, right. And they would hide
Behind the bench.
as I ran around the second lap, and then as soon as I passed them, they would come right behind me. And so I thought, well, you guys. Then, when the season started, I was probably the designated runner. I think we preceded Charlie Finley and the A's.
Designated runner, meaning if somebody got to the base,
Somebody got
they
to first
call a
base
timeout
typically.
and put you in or something.
Yeah, and then I could just steal the base. Well,
Steve was like lightning.
I didn't have to slide to second base, so
Stand up,
The coach-
stolen base, standing up.
got upset with me every time I did that. He fined me, and so I supposedly paid for at least half of the year-end party personally.
With the fines accumulated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that
Mike?
was fun.
I bet. Mike?
Yeah, I remember Bob Milano, a great coach, great guy. I remember our first unofficial practice. We thought we were serious, so we would have unofficial practices. You're only allowed so many practices in CCS. So I remember our first practice, and Steve, I hadn't met Steve yet, and Steve showed up at the field, And there was this guy, older guy, and he was yelling at all of us, "Hey, get going!" You know, and he was yelling at Steve. And I remember walking up to Steve and I said, "Hey, who in the hell is that old guy yelling at us?" He goes, "That's my dad."
Real friendly guy.
So you mentioned coaches. Any teachers that you remember well, or we're going to move on from that, or what? Bo?
Well, he's a teacher. He taught history, and Steve and I both happened to be in his history class. And because this is radio, you can't see what I'm going to do, but he would put his fingers up, point them at one another, and twist them from side to side and tell you, whatever you're talking about is a double barrel situation. And I never understood what that meant. But in that class is where I met Steve. And we were playing, that was the year we had the good football team. And we were going undefeated. And I was writing these teams down. You know, we beat so-and-so by this much, and we beat so-and-so by this much. And he thought I was an idiot. What's this idiot doing over there, writing all this crap on his binder?
I was thinking more of a Red Hot.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, that's how I met Steve. I don't know how the conversation started.
Do you have a...
Well, my binder was full of surfing
Oh, uh-huh.
info.
You and Pierce.
Decals.
Right,
and
Kent Pierce.
sayings and pictures.
Sayings. Uh-huh.
I thought Bill was, so what, you were undefeated. Who cares? Although I do and always have liked football, but
Yeah.
It just seemed like he was taking it too far.
Right.
And I think he thought I was a wimp because I was surfing stuff. So
Yeah.
it was a love-hate relationship to start with.
I remember you had the peroxide hair. True?
That happened one year, yes.
Yeah, uh-huh,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then I had no hair.
Yeah. Mike, you have any favorite teachers you remember?
Well, wasn't a teacher, but I think the person we probably all liked the most was Mr. Mangini, the Dean of Boys, and he was a disciplinarian in such a way. I mean, we all knew him. He knew us. He knew our families. So it wasn't like he was disciplining you. It was more like he was disappointed in you, and so you would feel bad. But he was a great guy.
Very fair about whatever he did.
Yeah, he was fair. And he had a secretary. Her name was, remember, Miss Finley? And we used to go in there and take out the I in her name, and it would be Miss Phony, and we'd laugh our ass off
I don't remember that.
and get in trouble.
Well, boys, we're about where we should be right now, okay? About the end of this podcast. Any parting shots? Anything you want to add to this?
We did take a trip in 1966. I think there were 5 of us, the 4 of us, and Jim, I think, was with us, Gandolfi.
Yeah.
And we went in my 51 Chevy, and we drove to, our object was to go to Mexico, to go to Tijuana, because we were really hot shots. And however, for whatever reason, we got to the border, and I was the only one that was 18, and I was the only one that could get into Mexico.
That's
So I had to
right.
turn around and drive these guys back to the motel we were
I think
staying,
it was Chula Vista.
Yeah.
wherever it was.
Yeah.
And then I went back to Mexico and got souvenirs and whatever. So then I came back, and then we went to Disneyland and almost got kicked out of Disneyland.
Didn't you get
Well,
escorted
I had a
out?
T-shirt on
He
at
had
the
to turn
time.
inside
We
out.
don't need to say what the T-shirt
Okay,
said,
anyway,
but it wasn't.
was either you
yeah.
have to leave or turn the T-shirt inside out. So
Yeah.
I turned it inside out, and we were able to stay.
We were able to stay?
I remember that trip, and none of us had a lot of money. So we stayed at these dive hotels. Remember that one hotel we went into, and we walked through the door, and there was a guy passed out in the room there, and we said, "Who in the heck are you?" And he said, "Who are you?" And we had to go back and figure out which room we were supposed
I
to
don't
be in.
remember that, but
Yeah.
I remember we stayed at cheap hotels, the cheapest we could find.
Yeah, in L.A. I mean, asking for trouble. Now you would never do something like that.
Well, boys, it's been a pleasure. Bo,
Thank you,
Maria,
Mark.
I know all the girls, our wives are watching this, along with Harold and Stephanie, good friends,
There's a lot of big
brother-in-law,
grins on
sister-in-law. Son Landon is here. Kathy's been videotaping this in the background. Let's see. Kathy, my wife, and Patty, Mike, the Kingfish's wife, Patty, is here. And, of course, Maria, Bo's wife. So thanks, guys, for being in the background and not making too much noise while we pulled this off today. And I want to thank all 3 of you for doing this. It means a lot to me. Sharing the summer of '66.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Hey, guys, if you like what we're doing, hit the like button and subscribe. I'd like to thank Mike Schembri, Bo Kucharski, Steve Rosati for being my guest today on Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. Thanks to Kathy and Shelby for editing and producing, and my musical director, Bray. You can hear more of Bray at bray.com. The Burlingame Historical Society copyrights this recording, and no part can be copied or replayed without the permission of the Burlingame Historical Society. So until next time, everyone, see you around Burlingame. It's a small town.